of the business club, you know, you just didn't do that.
Yeah.
You never had a time to do that. They don't have anything like, what are you gonna do? But anyway, it's pretty.
I was pre-law because being a teacher is not enough as the first gen person to go to college. And I worked at I was gonna go work on Capitol Hill, and I worked in DC, and I worked at a charter school on the, well, off the hill, but was founded as a public policy charter school. And I did literacy tutoring, and my students, I realized like I could go be a lawyer and be a child advocate, which is what I wanted to do, or I could become a teacher and get to work with kids before they ended up in the criminal justice system. So that's how I ended up as a teacher. And then I got really tired of being told how kids should learn and what works for students by administration who didn't actually know the research, didn't actually do the research, but just take talking points and put them on PowerPoints. So I went back to grad school. So in a way to get the credentials so I can tell those people that they're not like, and learn how to share research in a way that teachers get taught the real research, not some talking point about the research, and figure out how to use research to empower teachers doing research, using what teachers learn and know in the classroom, and teaching teachers. I had really great teacher ed people. I had a few really great ones, and I think that that's important. But I was a waitress for a really long time, so I have to say that like being a waitress,
Real world education.
I was a waitress in the biggest diner in Jersey for almost 10 years over high school and college, and that's like where I learned how to run a classroom, was working the counter at a diner.
Yeah.
Night shift at a diner.
So I guess I decided to be a teacher in like going into my senior year of college. I hadn't been thinking about that. I was an economics major at the time, but I was already kind of thinking like I'm not sure that's really what I want to do. I think I remember kind of having questions about like what can I do where I actually know that I'm doing something good for other people. You know, I just didn't really feel like any of the things that I was looking at felt that way. So I did like a summer camp program and was teaching writing to some immigrant children in Boston, and you know, I really enjoyed it. So then I decided my senior year I did a tutoring program after school, and I worked for a tutoring company. I worked at my college as a writing tutor, and so I was doing all these different types and trying to figure out
About 30 more seconds.
do. And I found that I really liked working in the school the most. So then I applied into Teach for America, and that was pretty much it. I've been doing it since.
How's the girl doing, by the way, that wrote that book?
Which one?
I read the book. I can't remember her name, but she seems like such a.
Teach for America?
Yeah.
The founder of Teach for
Founder,
America,
yeah.
Wendy Cobb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Girls have a lot of nerve.
Yeah.
I just wonder how she did.
She's like the CEO of the organization or something
She's
along those
still
lines.
active.
Yeah. Yeah.
She is quite
All right.
quite powerful when it comes to education policy.
So let me
Yeah.
pause you, and can we have a
That's
summary
good or bad thing.
I read that a long time
summary
ago.
comment or something that you noticed?
Yeah, thank you.
Someone different, if possible, from each group.
I was a little worried about it.
I think we all kind of wanted to or were something else, or
Yeah.
thought we were going to be something else, and then switched, and some of us didn't. There wasn't a lot of prestige associated with teaching, whether it was monetary prestige or like as the first person to go to college becoming a teacher, it wasn't what your family wanted you to be. So that chain that we eventually made it to teaching.
And I would say when I graduated, though, it felt like it was a prestigious thing to go.
Now I think
it's changed. I do feel it's changed.
considered
a bit.
professional now.
Yeah.
They didn't used to say that. I don't know why.
Someone from over here.
We were saying that two of us didn't start out as wanting to be teachers right away, but we sort of found it, and then two of us teachers from early elementary school.
Cool. So, there are lots of, right, obviously there are lots of ways that people come to be teachers. There's a wide variety just inside of this room with the 9 or so of us. A lot of people come to teaching from a very early age. So I was such a kid. Like, by things I wanted to be were like a cowboy when I was in 2nd grade. And then around 8th grade, I wanted to be an astronaut for a little while. And then around 9th grade, I had a really powerful experience doing peer tutoring after school for my geometry class, and just like did a whole bunch of that, and really enjoyed like helping people to understand things. Things that were hard for them suddenly became easier with just some help and guidance, and that it felt useful. And it felt really good to be able to help people like that. And from then on, it was like, I really want to do this. I like this. I'm good at it. And like education, like my grandmother was a classroom teacher, and my mom was involved in education in a number of different ways. And so it felt very natural. Like there was never anything I seriously considered beyond then. I was really pumped up for it. And I think that's true for many teachers. And then for many teachers, they come at it from another angle, or they thought that they were going to be something else for much longer than 8th grade, or majored in other things in colleges, or had whole other careers, right, before they started their teaching career. I think though it's the case. So Matt was saying something along these lines a little while ago, that like my sense of what was possible in terms of occupations was pretty limited growing up. Like there were the things that my parents did. My dad was a plumber, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and then like a computer lab manager at an elementary school. And like what my aunts and uncles did, which wasn't so helpful, because like, well, I guess one was a dentist, one was a doctor, but these are still like things that you might see in like a puzzle. They aren't like, what were the ones you were saying, like quality control?
Yeah, kind of like quality control of a manufacturing plant, or an actuary, or like, Ted was saying that he worked in business, and there are innumerable things that people do in business, but it's all sort of just under the umbrella of business when you don't know anything, the context.
So like, if growing up, kids have a pretty limited perspective on like what is possible for them in the world, and there are no doubt a number of endeavors and initiatives to help kids to figure that out. I don't know very much about them, but hopefully y'all will share some that you know about. That enlarges kids' sense of the world and possibilities beyond cowboy, astronaut, firefighter, pirate, all these kind of here. But beyond sort of the things that you might read about in storybooks, or see on kids shows on television, etc. So one thing that set me along this line of thinking is sort of my own feeling of not quite insecurity, but a little bit of that, of not being able to offer kids that perspective on the world as a teacher. So as someone who, I've been in school my whole life, I've had lots of experiences outside of school, of course, in my non-school time or my non-working time that I'm able to bring into my classroom and share with my students as a whole person. But I haven't been, right, an interior designer or an engineer, or all kinds of things that people who have a career first and then become a teacher have. And so I think that insecurity, or that lack of being able to point kids in certain directions, really limited me, or like made me start trying to figure out how to do better at that. So like in particular, so like teaching math, whenever a kid would ask me, so what good is this for? What can you do with this? I didn't have particular first-hand experience with that. I had always just done math for fun. right? I enjoyed it. I knew how to enjoy it. I could share that with kids, but it was academic, right? I was a kid who liked school, and like connected with it. But like not every kid that is true for. Right? I liked all academics. I just ate it up. When I was in first grade, my mom loves telling the story. I was in first grade and I was sick, and so I couldn't go to school. And my mom said, "All right, you have to stay home. You're sick today." And I was just so angry. I was like, I lived like 20 miles from school, right? If you don't drive me to school, I'm gonna walk to school. And so my mom had to call my teacher and get her on the phone so that she could like talk me down and like, you can come tomorrow, just stay home, you feel better, and so forth. But there's a lot to connect to in school, and some kids connect to lots of it, and some kids connect to a little bit of it. But there are all kinds of things that young people can connect to that aren't in school, and that they will make their lives on, right? And those things are exciting to me. So here are the next questions that I want to ask, and you guys have a chance to chat about. What were important ways that you encountered adults outside of school when you were a kid? And what important stuff as an adult do you do outside of school that doesn't happen in schools you know? What are the chunks of life that just don't show up in school?
I'd just like to comment on one thing. I mentioned to you with all these schools, but when I settled in the school I'm at now, it's entirely different than all the other schools because it's in the middle of nowhere. It's in the country. Small school in the country. And what I notice is that idea of saying that kids don't spend a lot of time in school, it's the opposite. Now these kids have no place else to go.
Right.
So they do spend a lot of time in school, and they do get most of their
Right.
stuff from school. And by the way, they're the cleanest cut bunch you'd ever see for some reason. And I don't think it's because of anything else than they don't get a lot from the outside.
Right, they don't have other ways to connect to their
No, there's
communities.
hardly anything. And you know what? They seem to like it. I can't figure out why.
My
By the way, I'd get
students
bored
do.
to death if I looked at it.
My students didn't leave school until like at least 8 o'clock at night every night. And
Sure.
came in at school started at 8:45 and they were there, but like
Mhm.
kids were waiting when we would get to school to get in.
What time would they leave?
8 o'clock at night.
At night. And where was
Take
it?
the train to go.
And was it in the city?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
But
interesting.
that's because it's not a lot of my students. There's no like unless they live near a rec center. There's the
That's interesting.
somewhere
I'm
to
glad to hear that. And the school is okay with that. They keep out. Yeah, because you know, I mean, they do.
How much they were okay with them being there was debatable, but
Well, if it's any safe place, it should be there. How's good security?
Can you, I'm not sure if I understand number 2.
Sure. So maybe I'll give an example of each answer of my own, and that will help you in your own conversations. So I'll pause you and say a little bit. So for the first question, when I was a kid, maybe 12 or 13, I wish I had a picture. It's better than this, but I started. My mom taught me to play chess when I was a little kid, and I like somehow got interested in it, and started going to the chess club in my hometown, in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and and so there were just these adults there, of a range of abilities and interests, and so forth, who I played chess with and like talked to, and there were just these adults in town who like were all interested in chess. And it really struck me as I was getting ready for this talk, or this conversation, how important that was for me. Like, I didn't have a lot of connections to adults who weren't a part of my family or weren't a part of my schools. In particular, I started with one of the people at the club. Our families got to know each other. He was the chess coach for my sister and my younger brother in their elementary school, and like I started helping him at the camps that he would run in the summers for elementary school kids, and then I ended up coaching a team for a semester before I went off to college, and so it was a really formative experience in terms of teaching and having experiences teaching and mentoring young people long before I had a classroom of my own. And all of this happened all of it came out of these connections that I made outside of a school setting. And so that was pretty cool. And there are lots of ways that that young people find connections with caring, interesting adults in their lives outside of school. So that's sort of what I mean about question one. For question two, so one thing, this is like a significant thing in my life that did not show up at all in my school experience is my income tax. I was totally unprepared for anything having to do with that. It's like, how does one do this? What is it all about? I don't know. And so as an adult, it's something that like I've had to like learn about and figure out and so forth, and that every adult knows about and deals with and so on. And there are probably schools and places there are probably educational institutions that work with teenagers to understand what this is all about, and if there are, I'm really curious about them. But my sense is that for the most part, that is a chunk of adult life that does not show up in school. So I'm curious to generate more examples of that for this first question. For the second question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so take a few minutes and discuss in small groups those two, see what experiences you have had that don't turn up in school, or that weren't a part of your school experience.
For me, the first one, I was in a scout troop where we were not allowed to have parents as leaders, and all of the leaders of the scout masters of the troop were adults who had been in the troop in the past. But really, it was also we as the boys ran it mainly, and they were sort of the adults there to help us. And to me, that's still like my ideal of leadership is still so much like that. Last night or yesterday, Chris Neiman's talk was on distributed leadership, and that's what I experienced in my troop, having leaders who trusted us to be able to do a lot of things on our own, and in turn, help train someone else to come along and take over for us so we can move on and do the next task or challenge for ourselves. I don't think there's often ways that you see that in school.
Agree 100%, but it does occur in business all the time.
Yeah.
Because if you make it to middle management, what they're gonna do, if you're gonna be looked at for positions, is they're gonna think in their mind, not so much, well, he did this or he did. What is he going to do if we put him in charge of this place? That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And I would like to see more of that as, project-based stuff. Give these guys something and let them decide what they're gonna do. I'd almost like to see that stretch, that project goes something like this. Okay, the science teacher come in, who's very good at project-based stuff, by the way. This guy keeps these kids engaged and so on, I can't believe it. And they like it. If something is interesting as mitosis, they just flip over it. This guy's good, And it's funny because I'd like to see almost to stretch this to the end. Okay, guys, today's class, you're going to choose the project, and you're going to develop it. And even though it's only 6th graders, I think they would be capable of doing it. And it's funny because that is real world there. Excuse me the word,
Yeah.
but for what my encounters have been. So many places now they do it in higher levels of education. The principal of the school, they put her in there because they think she's going to do the same right. But it's structured, whereas the business community never was. It's always, okay, this guy goes in there, they start giving him a nice bad chance. Either ruins things or stays in the job and does great. But we surprised me, by the way. I didn't think I was ever going to see that. That's all I saw. So, I don't know if you feel that.
I think that a lot, like, working in nonprofits and in different, like, national orgs in DC as an intern, but a lot of times you get stuck writing the plans for, like, you go to someone and what is your job? What do you do every day? Like, what are your responsibilities in writing those kind of documents so that, because there is so much job change now, that everybody has to write those. Because you might move up or move to a different department, or you might move somewhere else. So everybody has these kind of like, I forget what they're called, but they're like policy papers essentially on like what my job is. this is my daily schedule, this is what I do over a week, this is what I do every quarter. And we wrote those, like student government officers wrote those when I was student government sponsor, just because there's no roles and responsibilities other than like a paragraph that was in, and I think that that's something that happens like outside, like you write annual reports and you write annual like, everyone I know who works in the, like in tech industry or in anything with consulting or any of the, like even attorneys do it. All of these people write these like annual goal reports for themselves and they're evaluated on those goals. What do you want, how much education do you want, all that stuff. And that doesn't happen in school with teachers that much, I don't think, and it doesn't happen, definitely doesn't happen with students. That's self-assessment. And I think that that's something that you don't see in school. And I'm not just talking about like fill out the rubric for yourself. I'm really talking about like true goal setting, because when you have to do that and you don't know how, it's really hard.
You know, that's the idea that I'm saying, exactly what I'm saying, you know, you know what I guess you all heard the Peter Principle in business.
Yeah.
That's how it works, I mean, they keep promoting these guys until they get to this level where they really don't know what they're doing, so they don't get promoted again, you know, and so therefore that's the common comment is, well, the whole place is run by competence, the level they got to. Well, what they're really saying here is that, you know, we gotta keep going up, and unfortunately with the kids, I see it all the time, this kid can do it, they're very classroom filled with different levels of capability, I can't believe it, boy, it wasn't like that when I was in school years ago, they divided you 1, 2, 3, and 4, and if you were the smart group, you were in group 1, and the dumb group, group 4, now, no matter where I go, like I said, I math teachers, be careful. You know, I don't know if you see that. Is that the way it is everywhere though? Like,
You stay
they
in
put all
college
the
for
kids in-
6 years.
I guess it's good, but what I'm saying is if they could, I don't know how it ends up or whether they carefully pick, say this group's gonna be this guy, this guy, this guy, you know, this guy, this guy. But because they don't set their own goals, I think they're setting their goals. They don't know whether they scored or not. My little girl that I had, my little Carrie, the biggest problem I have is getting to her to really enjoy when she does it. It's a good grade. She had trouble with her grade. First it was behavior. Now it's grades. You know? So we're gonna try to get overcome the behavior. We did overcome the behavior. But I just gotta get a grade.
Take about another 30 seconds.
She doesn't know when she does good even. She doesn't feel it. She doesn't feel good about it.
Well, I think that, I mean, you know, I would love to see kids writing their own goals. I don't even think kids, because they're no longer forced to think critically or reflectively, could even set their own goals on a regular basis. I mean, if I asked my kids, let's sit down and think about, I do at the end of the year, what goals do you want to have? It takes them a long time to think about what would that be like for them, let alone on a project base. And I think we have to get back to that. We have to get back to critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, self-reflection, and thinking about all the important stuff as an adult that I didn't learn inside school. You know, it's like everything other than school, finances, relationships, self-growth, reflection, like everything that makes your adult life full and rich. It's nothing we did in school.
By the way, they did
And I
do
did
a
well in
goals
school. I mean, I succeeded in school. I'm so proud of school. I'm a teacher of school. You know, I learned that game. I did it well. I did it well. But talk to me about the rest of my life.
Right.
They did a goal setting exercise.
So can we get a share from each group? So we know what each other talked about a little bit? Maybe someone new? Yeah.
We talked a little bit about like financial literacy, like personal finance and how, I don't know, personally budgeting, like I don't think I balance the checkbook well because I never learned. Like I'm teaching my students to balance the checkbook, but like if I look at my dad's checkbook, it is down to the penny. And I'm always like fumbling through ATM receipts in my pocket or my purse or in my car to see. And I think that's a generational thing, but I think that students don't realize like if you're using your debit card, there's a finite amount of money on there. So if you're not keeping track of it and you go to swipe it
Don't work.
and it doesn't work, you're not getting that. And also with budgeting, I was teaching a class, and this just happened this week, so it's still like, it's got my blood boiling, but 6 kids dropped because we're doing budgeting, and we're budgeting and they didn't have enough to pay the gas bill on their imaginary budget,
And they
and I
felt
said,
it good.
what are you going to do? Their homework was to figure out what they were going to do, and at the table, Maria just said, like, right away, like, get a second job, or one of the students who stayed said she didn't need a $70 pair of shoes, like, that's where I wanted them to think, and the 6 kids just dropped it, so I was with the roster
Bankruptcy.
chair, like, and he was like, well, he was like, it was a great idea, and it's a great course, he's like, but it's an elective, they don't need it to graduate, they have their credits, and I was like, but they don't have their gas bill paid either. So, that kind of stuff, that just connecting them to, like, that is important, like,
Yeah.
when you graduate here and you turn 18, the apartment just doesn't appear and everything's paid for and it's great, like.
Thanks. Someone from over here?
I guess we talked a lot about how adults work and how they work together more so. Like I was saying, my experience when I was a kid was I was in a Boy Scout troop that was almost like run like a corporation, and you know you became a leader and you worked on developing someone else to replace you so you could be promoted to the next level of leadership, and there were adults there who weren't our parents who we kind of looked to for guidance, but they left it up to us to be responsible for a lot of the things. So Ted said that sounded very similar to his experience in business, and we also talked about different ways that people work, whether in nonprofits and business or whatever, and how it's different from the way that we often ask kids to work in school.
Yeah. Right. We're, for the most part, the way that they're evaluated is individually.
Yeah.
And most of their products are individual products.
Yeah.
But the thing I wanted to emphasize, I like what she said about them feeling the pain of not having enough money to pay the bill. But what I was advocating, and this occurred in another group we were in yesterday, feeling good about something that, as good as a person does in the world out there, when they maybe, if they're a salesman, hit on a good sale, so that they could feel the goodness of a grade. I'm having trouble right now. I have this one girl, we're having her feel good about a good score on a test. It just seems to, I did good on that, next day she'll fail one, but the idea of feeling good is, I think, what's gonna put her over the top and be a success, because she's got the brains to be, but she doesn't feel good enough about success. Or in some ways, bad enough about failure either, but I think if I could somehow figure out how to do that, get her to feel good about when she does good.
I just wanted to comment on that idea. So I've noticed, like, with SLF, because we have so many projects, that sometimes when I take a quiz, I don't feel proud of it just because it's not something I put in any creativity to. So I feel like I just remembered something I learned, I didn't do anything, versus a project
that's
where
nice.
I actually worked on it, so I feel really proud because this was like, I took my knowledge but I expanded, so it
All
was
right,
nice.
great. As an SLA student, thank you for coming in on it. It's gonna help me. What I said, and see if this would work, now this is 6th graders. You guys are way over this now. But think back, not that far. What I said was, wouldn't it be neat if instead of Mr. Harcraft coming in with a project on drawing some mitosis and figuring out what the cells look like, all right, you figure out what project do you want to do today. You pick a project, you do it. Take it from the very beginning. Pretend you are running the class and you're going to assign it, but you're going to assign it to your own small group. You think that would work? In other words, you have to dream up the project. That's a pretty big challenge, because you can't just come up with something silly. You got to come up with the real thing.
I think, well, it also depends on what kind of technology you have available, or like even materials. But in my biochem class, we actually gave the opportunity to just do a video on that subject exactly, and we were given different materials, and because we got to choose, it was different than just writing the answer. Even though in other assignments we had to do that, it was like we took that later and.
Did you choose the project?
We were given that as a video, but we could do anything within the time limit.
They just said do a video.
Yeah.
Good.
And that you had to express this information, but it wasn't that exact.
That's interesting. Yeah, thank you. Something that can be tough about the thing that you just described is if something is too open-ended, sometimes
I
these.
know, it's as open-ended, that's what I said, it's as open-ended as you can get.
Right.
With sixth graders.
So whenever we look at that with experienced eyes or adult eyes, we have a sense for sort of what the landscape among which you could choose things, right? We could be like, hey kid, look at all, like, you could choose anything, and we see all the things, and they may not see anything, right? Because,
You're right.
so there's, I feel like you're very right in wanting to help your student with a sense of agency, right? But there's also, it sounds like there will be some support that will be needed in not guiding your student towards some particular thing, but like what it would mean to like choose a thing at all. And I have some more to say about that on Math Munch, but at the moment, steer things towards did y'all? Yes, nice. Everyone got it. All right, so these are two blank images side by side, because I want to share these two images that I've only had in my imagination for a long time, that I cared a lot about toward the beginning of my teaching career, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll try drawing a picture of what they're like, but then I was like, I don't think I can do that. It'll just be more fun for you to imagine them there, so we're going to do that. So the first one, and I've never juxtaposed these before I started thinking about this talk, but so here are the two. So the first one on the left, it's important that you imagine it on the left. So the first one is, it came out of thinking about being an artist, maybe, right? Or about how artists work in different media. The first school the school I was working at the time was sort of an art school. Like we thought of, the school tried to hire visual artists to teach art and publish writers to teach English, and people who had like been doctors or done science to be the science teachers and so on. So it had this sense of you have had some experience in such a field, and now you're doing it with kids. So that I think that got me to thinking about, so what's my medium, right? So like a potter works in clay, and like a painter might work in watercolors or what have you. And I got really excited about this notion of thinking of what was happening in my classroom as being like an artifact, or like a piece of performance art, right? You see the sort of far out performance art pieces that people do, and it's just like, this is like the most incredible medium ever, right? Because it's like a bunch of people, and you're helping to coordinate them into like an improvisational dance where they are also the audience for the thing that is happening in this room. So this is what you're kind of imagining, like that, like, or like the way that a conductor helps to make this thing happen, even though they're just sort of standing up there waving their hands, but like the orchestra is doing the thing and they're just helping them along. That I was like, oh, that's such a cool way of framing what it's like to do classroom teaching. That you're helping this performance, this artistic creation happening in this room, and the audience for it is the students themselves, right? They're getting to grow and change and also be self-reflective on it. And the thing that was really great about it is that it made and built its own context. What do I mean by that? So you're able to build a little community, a little thing that sort of makes sense in itself, with interrelationships and supports and moments of high emotion and all of this stuff, right? So that it doesn't matter what's happening in the next room or down the hall or anywhere out there in the world. There are moments in classrooms, at least, and sometimes more than moments, where things really gel and it feels really awesome, right? So I like that idea of sort of like a coherent, beautiful experience. Maybe it lasts for 5 minutes, maybe it lasts for a whole semester. Like, just like, you can frame it in lots of different ways, but a classroom as a whole experience. So that's on the left. On the right is this very other notion of the way that I thought about what was happening in my classroom and what I wanted for my students. And it goes something like this. So like, here are these young people, and they, have all kind of potentialities and could do and grow and be lots of different things. And then here's all of the stuff of the world, all of the life and beauty and excitement and just everything, right? The whole world. And they've already have access to some of it, but there's a lot that they don't have access to. There's like a wall here or a curtain or something. And then it's my job to somehow like lift up or open up or something, some little window or some little gap so that there's access between these young people and what I find exciting about what's out here in the world. Right? And that's hard work, but it's also really, I think it's really, really cool, right? It's like how do you make these connections from inside to outside? And that's a pretty different image than the first one, right? Because before, what mattered what was happening in the room, right? It felt very sort of self-contained in its own little thing. And the second one, it does matter what's happening in the classroom next door or out there in the world, because that's the thing you're trying to connect young people to. Okay. So I mean, those are both live at any given moment, right? Those are just lenses on the activity that we're doing. Like any particular lesson, you could think about in terms of how are we making this thing happen here. You can also think about how is this putting someone on a trajectory out there for the rest of their lives. Like what's going to be the thing that they get a little bit of a glimmer here and today so that tomorrow or next week or next year it gets them moving in a certain direction that's going to be important in their lives. And so just getting ready for this talk, these images came to mind, right? On the one hand, these sort of whole experiences that I want for my students on lots of different scales, right? Like I want my classes, like an individual class period to somehow be like a coherent whole, and I want like a semester or a whole year to feel like a coherent whole. And it would be fantastic if like a kid's entire career at a school, whether it's, you know, for 3 years or 4 years or whatever, to somehow make sense as a whole, so that when they look back on it, it's not just like a little scattering of a bunch of things, but like it feels like someone put some thought into it to make it, I would say, artistic whole, has some sort of coherence to it. And I think schools, lots of schools work really hard, and lots of teachers in their own classrooms work really hard at that, like having a classroom culture, having standards. That's not the right word. Having what's the thing that you have in a room? Not standards, but structures. It's not important. Anyway, to have little things that make sense. And on the other hand, like something that's much more divergent, right? Where like think about my own life and how I've sort of put together a thread of things that it's just like none of was ever particularly whole, but like thinking about myself in chess over the course of my life, right? Along the way, maybe there were individual experiences that felt like wholes, but over the course of time, it's just sort of like skipping off across the water, right? Or only after the fact can you kind of connect the dots. It's sort of a thin thing. And then like in the end, you know, our lives might look something like this, right? Where, you know, there are all kinds of other like invisible blobs out here that we didn't happen to run through, right? But there were potential experiences. And then like, you know, you're cruising along and like, you know, here's elementary school and here's your dance recital, which is like all kinds of things. And it needn't be this linear, right? Kind of collapsing all kinds of stuff. But the point being that I think that I want, and I think that we as teachers and educators want sort of both of these things for our students, right? For them to sort of like feel like a home and safe in our classrooms, to have an experience with us, and also like I don't want my student just to like grow this orb bigger and bigger, like layer upon layer. Like I want them eventually to move on and like do the next thing and try the next thing out and trace out something beyond my own classroom or my own school, because that's what life is like. On the other hand, like if it were just one little thing after another, I feel like I need in my own life to have experiences I can look back on and think of as like, yes, that was a thing for me. All right. So anyway, the point of this of this conversation, of this session, is more on the latter, right? Like, we do lots of work trying to make experiences for our students, but how do we help them jettison off on their own paths and connect them to things beyond our own schools and classrooms? I've never said any of those things just now out loud. Does anyone have any thoughts or reactions to?
I just wondered, did you tie it into your math class? You know, it's funny, 'cause the math class I monitored with her last week, you know, she, well, we're done now, we're moving from everything we did, we're moving into algebra. So now she's getting ready to make another big wall, another big, or like you got there. But what I'm wondering is, there's not, now these kids didn't have any string in between, see? And have you done it in your math class? Can you relate to something that after you stop, maybe you covered one area very seriously, now you're gonna go to the next one, and did you give them some string outside to use? Could you figure out a way to get them to go away for a while and come back?
I think so. I think that all of us as teachers have like pieced things together and like have coherent narratives for our subjects, right? Or like see the interconnections among things that are really hard for kids to get at all, or especially on the first time through. I didn't understand calculus until I taught it for the second time. Like, after I'd taken it 2 times. I taught it 2 times, and now, like, I've got some good stuff on it. But those are not easily won. That's really hard work. I don't know if that's helpful. Yeah.
This is something.
I just wanted to say that kids are already on their path, like they already are on a path. But I think as a teacher, it would be maybe our job to try to help them make their path have more meaning or purpose, and maybe direct them, find what their strengths are, or help them find their strengths and help them kind of direct their path on their own.
Yeah, no, I think it's very true, right? Like our students don't come to us with zero velocity, right? They're coming from somewhere and already moving in directions, and we can't be like, no, go that way.
Yeah, do it my way.
But we do have the opportunity to at least point out directions from which they can head out that they may not have considered before, or thought that they had access to.
The problem is that, like, I have a class of 33 kids, and it switches every 45 minutes.
Yep.
How do I do that?
Yeah, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen for every kid, right? Like there are students that I've had over the course of my career who came through my class and had whatever experience they had, and we didn't particularly connect, and there you go. But there have been some kids for whom
I want to, but I don't know how to do that.
right. People have thoughts about what things have you been able to do with or for students that help to change guide their paths forward beyond your class?
Well, I think one of the things I have to keep in mind is I don't know how I'm guiding them on their path, and I may never know it. But what I can do is make sure I develop a relationship as much as I possibly can with them, and however that impacts them, I may never know. Because it's not gonna end at the end, on June 19th, however I've affected them, for the good or the bad. And so I try to keep that in mind, because I tend not to. I think one of the pitfalls of my teaching isn't like my class, your 8th grade year, and I forget this whole line. I like, I can, I'm kind of on the left side there. And yeah, that's much better for me to, hopefully I'll be able to see that in my class. Anyway, I don't know if that answers it, but just that I don't know that we can see the end result ever.
I think one of the ways I've helped students or tried to help them, because I'm not sure if it did help, is bringing students who have been successful in a path back to talk to them. So peers that they know, like, who are in college, or even who have graduated, or who are in a job that they want to be in. A student that I had my first year teaching, we actually ended up working at a camp together as she was my boss. Actually, it was a weird concept, but she is now a makeup artist, and that's like her side job, and she's I don't know what she is, a buyer, I think, for Ulta, but she went to cosmetology school, so when girls want to go into that, I had her come and kind of talk about her path, because, I mean, she has green hair and does awesome makeup and is much cooler than I am. So when she comes back, I'm like, this is Tasha, she graduated in, I can't remember what year, and have her talk about kind of the struggles she had or where she thought she was going to be. Like when she graduated in 12th grade, I'm pretty sure she thought she was going to be doing makeup on a Hollywood set. But she's very happy where she is and has not given up that goal at all. Like the new Rocky movie is filming right in the neighborhood of my school, and Tasha, I know, is probably camped out on the corner, but like just to share her drive with them and that it wasn't easy for her to get where she is. I think sometimes that's really powerful. To me, I'm like, I could share my path, but I'm just the teacher sometimes.
That's a really good point, the way that when our students move on, often there's a discontinuity, right? Where like the kids for whom, you know, these kids who go on to be adults, these are exactly the kinds of role models and examples and like windows into the rest of the world that our current students would really benefit from. Even more so than just like random cool adults, like, because then there's a real sense of like, this is something that's possible for me.
Right.
That's really wow. I'm gonna run through. Are there any other thoughts?
I think on the same token, having the students reach out to someone too and giving them the encouragement if you find the reason to have them contact someone. We do in 10th grade, we have like a sort of capstone project for 10th graders instead of seniors, and you know, I had a student who wanted to build headphones for some reason. He asked me to be his advisor because I was his technology teacher last year, but I know nothing about that. I can only help him so much, but you know, I said, okay, well, I know this person who knows more than I do. Why don't you contact him, and I'll help you write a professional message to him. And you know, if you get a response, let me know what that ends up being. And I think those sorts of things, students need the push, and they need to know who to look for, and they need the guidance there.
It's really cool that it's in 10th grade instead of 12th grade.
I think so. And then in 11th and 12th grade, I do sense that they mature a lot, and I think that 10th grade project has a lot to do with it. It's sort of, oftentimes, I think they're ultimately a little disappointed because they're not able to balance what they want to do with all the other things that they have to do for our school, and we don't really help them in that way. But I do think it's valuable for them in that way.
So I'm going to run through a couple of my two examples of Math Munch and Princeton Learning Cooperative to share that, and then hopefully we'll have some time at the end either for questions from me or for more conversation. So feel free to jump in with any questions. I'm going to cruise a little bit. So this is this website that I've been writing for about 3.5 years. That's crazy. With two of my colleagues formerly from St. Anne's School, Anna Weltman and Paul Solomon. So this came out of wanting to, I was teaching 5th graders at the time, and I had this notion of like wanting to lift up this curtain and connect my students with all of this cool math in particular, because I was a math teacher, all of this cool stuff that was out there in the world that I was running across on the internet, right? Because there's like cool videos and cool games and cool articles and all kind of like just images that I would run across, but that my students, these 5th graders, they were never going to see, right? Unless I helped them to notice them. Like it was all sitting there on the internet, available. But even if they had the thought of sitting down at a computer and typing in cool math that would amaze me, it wouldn't particularly turn up, right? Because the internet, to search well, you have to sort of have a sense for the thing you're looking for already, and that requires a kind of expert knowledge. So anyway, on a weekly basis, we just started sticking up on a website called Math Munch, just things that we liked, that we couldn't bring into our classrooms on a daily basis because there was so much other stuff to do, and because even if you bring in a really cool thing into your classroom that's sort of off the beaten path, it's probably not gonna be the case that every kid thinks it's really cool. Like there might be like 5 kids who think it's really cool, and everyone else is like, whatever. And maybe there's like the one kid who like it changes their life, right? Or like makes them change their mind, that like go from I hate all math to like I hate all math except that one thing. Okay, I guess I don't hate all math, right? But you can't just do that on a daily basis and hope that it eventually works out for all the kids. You don't have all. I didn't have class time for all of that. So thought was export some of this, right? So like, and you know, there are lots of logistical issues of these kinds of things in terms of equity and making sure kids have internet access, but just sort of like on a weekly basis, be like, here, go and see this thing. Just check it out, scroll through. We'll have a moment in class to chat about it. You'll get a chance to reflect on the thing that you saw, and then we'll move on to other things. Right? So a very simple idea, this notion of curating stuff that was out there in the world for young people. And there, like I said, there's things to make and videos, and we started doing interviews with people whose work we featured, and on and on and on. So just to give a little bit of example and to relate back to something toward the beginning, just name some mathematicians. Go. Einstein. Turing. Pythagoras. Ptolemy. Pascal. You abstain?
I'll abstain.
Okay. Those are awesome. Great job. Any more that you want to toss out? All right. One, notice that was not particularly easy. We only came up with so many. If I had asked for name an author, you probably would have named a lot more. It would have been a lot easier. Also, some of the authors you would have named probably could have been alive, unlike any of the people that you named. Believe it or not, there are mathematicians who are alive. Also, some of them are women. Also, some of them are people of color. Right? There's like all kinds of people who like in the world right now are like living and breathing and doing mathematics, and it's a big part of their life. And they look like anything you could imagine. They're young and they're old, and every gender and race and all these things. But you would never know that, right? Like a 5th grader would never know that. And like most math teachers don't know that. And like on the one hand, of course not. Like why, like if I had said biologist, probably the same thing would have happened. I can't. How many biologists can I name? Not very many, right? And they are probably mostly dead, and they are probably mostly white, and they are probably mostly male, etc. But I think it's really important for young people, my students, and for all kinds of students all over the place to like see these people. And in particular, like how different that is than this, right? So, because for one thing, there's no mathematician on this puzzle. And in particular, even if there were, I don't know how much a kid would be able to connect with it and see it as a real possibility for themselves.
There's a knight up there.
Yeah, there's a knight. So I'm going to tell a story about one of my students who was a 7th grader. This was the next year. This is not the 7th grader. This is Nalini Joshi, who is a mathematician in Australia. She grew up in Burma as a girl, and then her family had to flee to Australia because of political unrest. She was the first female professor at the University of Sydney. This was not that long ago. In fact, I'm gonna get the dates wrong, but you would be surprised that it was pretty recently, like in the last 15 years, that there was a professor at Harvard University in mathematics who was a woman. That's crazy, right? like in my life, like since I have been born, if I remember correctly. All right. So anyway, this is Nalini. She has an amazing story. There's a video of her story on the web. If you search for Nalini Joshi, I'm sure it'll turn up very quickly. It's this beautiful, beautiful video that one of her colleagues, who is a filmmaker, made of her. So anyway, The upshot is that one of my so this was one of the Math Munch posts featuring some of Nalini's work. We also did an interview with her, which we got submissions from my students, and we put out invitations for questions from students from all over the world, whoever reads the blog. And so anyway, my 7th graders really connected with her, both because they got to interview her, they fell in love with her story, and in particular there was one girl whose name was Balladine. She had struggled for math for years. This was toward the end of our year together, and she'd made such progress, both in terms of her mathematical capacities and also her self-image with respect to mathematics. Felt very much more capable, was comfortable going to the board and sharing and presenting things. But it really wasn't until she watched this video with Nalini that something really clicked for her. Because Nalini compared doing mathematics with like playing and listening to music, and Bal is a bassist, like plays in a band, and it's like this really cool person. But like whenever she made the connection that like, oh, the way that she's thinking about mathematics and music as being like really connected, and not in some like just theoretical way, but like in the way that she feels and thinks about the two subjects or the two endeavors. And that really, even after all of the stuff that we had done in our classroom, right? All of these experiences that Balladine had, it was this connection to something sort of beyond that really made things click. And so Bal made this lovely video. We did these end of the year mini TED Talks, and where I said, hey kids, you've got 30 seconds to tell the world something about math. And then they each they worked in small groups to do this, and Bal made hers about Nalini, and it was really, really cool. So I'd like to briefly chat or ask you guys your thoughts on what kinds of experiences like that I just described for Balladine happened for your students, this aha moment with respect to connecting with something out in the world, and then what ones can you imagine in the subject that you teach, with the students that you work with. Doesn't have to be anything particularly like what I just described, but like in the genre of connecting with something outside of their school experience. Or concoct something.
Are we small group talking or big group talking?
You can do small group talking. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I've only got this one little, I only worry about this one little girl. I think if I could successfully move her forward, right, what some of you guys do. So, you know, if I could, I'm gonna show it, try to figure out when I get some time off this time and show it. They do let me do that, though, before, she's clever. By the way, I've got her to stop just going for walks with us. And they wasn't, right around and walk around, it's gonna calm her down, do it. Now I've got past that, so I'm really bored. Miles, she doesn't have to go out of the room anymore, she can settle for that long. Cause it was actually a time thing, it was 30 minutes or more, she's gotta go for a walk, she starts to run.
Yeah. How old is she?
Got a 12 and 12. Picture over here. You know, it's something, because she's actually like, one day, I said, they had dress up day. So, she said, you know, I'm all dressed up today, Mr. Bass. I said, all right, I'll take your picture. She grabs my phone and makes sure that that's where it ends up, that's her best friend. You know, that's the way they are. She's like,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
she's good, she's
Yeah.
something.
Which one is she?
The park girl.
Okay. Did you see it?
Yeah, she was, I had 5 kids at the beginning of the year, and they did okay. Now I just got down to her. And, but anyhow, the thing, and I'm having so much trouble, they want her grades to come up. We got the behaviors, the ground's clear enough for her to worry about. Her behaviors, I'm not gonna go. But she said, I'm motivated. I don't care, Mr. Green, but she's got so much potential, she's grasped math concepts. When they introduced variables, and the teacher glossed over that there's a 1 in front of the variable. She really glossed it. 1 over, I did not, 1 kid in the class, and then he reviews the lesson, and she says, okay, what's in front of the variable? Kaylee's hand goes up, number 1. She gets it, she hears it, she can do it, but she doesn't have can't find reason.
She hasn't done the payoff yet.
Thank you, it's exactly
Because she
correct.
hasn't, and she never got through the behavior. So it's gonna take a while for her to get the payoff and then recognize the payoff as something she wants and then work towards it. It's a long.
So it is a procedure once the behavior, I thought maybe the behavior was, how would I say, she might miss it. Not at all.
I mean, she may have missed it before, but she still isn't, she doesn't know the payoff. She's not.
So I shouldn't give up on it.
Oh God,
No matter how.
no. This is only the first major hurdle that, you know, yeah, just get exposed to the payoff and then desire it and then work towards it and then, you know.
I'm really hoping for that, that's all I can tell you. I think it's such a sweet, she's got too big a heart, that heart. But, you know, behavior wise, it doesn't show it. Should do something like a kid in the room will need an erasure in the middle of a big test. They shouldn't do this anymore, I don't think. Erase, I need an eraser, not now. We'll get you. She'll get up, get the eraser, give it to me, because she needs an eraser. Not because she's trying to disrupt the class, but she wants this kid to like her.
Yeah.
That's hard. You're
Yeah.
negative defiant, it's a big hard.
Right. Sometimes I think about, you know, because I think we've all seen kids who have some of the qualities you're talking about, and I think like, you know, back to earlier conversations with what jobs are there and things that they might not know. Like, you know, some kids like that, they might
Think
be
about
a
30
great
seconds.
social worker. You know, they just care about people and
She
they're
wants to
really
be a teacher.
Yeah, you know, they'll be, but they're, you know, there's no class in taking care of other people. You know, right? It's just assumed it's part of every class, but it never becomes the actual focus of your learning.
By the way, I think it's a sincere wish on her part that she wants to be a teacher, but she doesn't make that connection between, well, she's gotta do this now to get to this over here. That's not even close to being.
I just started making that connection about Al-Anon for years. You know, yeah. I was just gonna say the one thing that, and it's on my mind, I'm really excited about it because it's like my favorite project of the years. We read a novel every month and, the kids have a project. And the project that I get, the only requirement I give them is they have to make a 10-song playlist of songs that represent the novel, the themes, the characters, the relationships, the conflict, and they have to write 3 sentences about why they chose that song and show me that they, you know, read the novel and whatnot. But what I love about it is they get to pick songs that are important to them and represent the novel, and so they connect so much to the novel that way, and they connect the experiences of the characters' lives to their life, just through music, and I don't have to do a whole lot with it.
And I'll pause, y'all.
Did you ever bring it in, Max? Did you ever have them bring in any of your music?
Is there something that each group would like to share real quick?
That's what we do.
And maybe have a reading, and then they have them play, and then back to the reading.
That's what they do.
I love to watch you guys actually.
Who would like to share?
It's cool. It's really cool.
Going once? Going twice? Because I will power through if no one
Okay.
wants to.
I share the one project that I'm excited because it's due this Friday. So the kids, we read a novel every month. The kids, the project is to pick 10 songs that represent aspects of the novel: theme, characters, conflict, relationships, whatever, scenery, setting, and they have to write 3 sentences per song as to why that connects to the novel. I love it because they get so excited. They get to they use their music and they combine it with their learning, and they get to show who they are as well as their knowledge of the novel. And so it's always their favorite project, and you know, I get to learn a whole lot about them and about their music, about what's going on for them in the world today through music. And it's just a really rich learning experience for all of us.
Awesome.
I have a very different, I teach 3rd through 5th honors classes, and we were working on community-based service learning projects. So I really pull in a lot of community partners, and it varies from my 3rd graders working with the zoo to figure out ways to recycle and help gorilla habitats, to gun violence with unlicensed guns and child abuse. But this is my first year, so I'm learning ways to, you know, see how much they grow from this, and I like the idea of the TED Talk or something at the end that I can see, well, how did this affect them and what will they take with it into the next grade. But yeah, I really try and pull as many community partners into the classroom as I can.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna.
You're doing is kind of like a middle school.
Want to talk some about my job as my second. This is it's an enormous example. Like, there's so many aspects of this that have to do with life beyond the school walls, but I'll try to focus on a couple. So I work at a place called Princeton Learning Cooperative in Princeton, New Jersey. These are my colleagues, Joel Hammond, Allison Plankus, and Paul Scott. Princeton Learning Cooperative. There's also a Bucks Learning Cooperative. It's not too far from Philly. It's in Bucks County. If you Google search either of those, you'll see our website, and there's lots of information there, more than I'll say here. But the basics are, we've been around this is our 5th year. We're modeled after a place in Western Massachusetts called North Star, which has been around for about 20 years. And our work is helping young people for whom school is not a good fit, teenagers, to leave school and to do something else with their lives, which looks like a lot of different things. But all of it is supported by our center. We have a physical space with a place for young people to hang out with couches and etc., and then also classrooms surrounding it. So we're open 4 days a week. We share a lot of similarities with school in the sense that, like, there are teenagers there are adults there are classes, there are, trips out into the community, like field trips. There's some of the trappings of the same thing, but there are also some major differences. The biggest of which is that it's entirely non-coercive, so everything is optional. Being there is optional. Going to any particular class, even if you had signed up for it and said you were going to do it, on any particular day you'd be like, nope, I'm not doing that today. If you are at PLC and you're like, I want to go take a hike, then you can go take a hike or go and get lunch. Full range and freedom of motion. So that's bedrock. Is that so here here are these kids who are in school and were not being successful and happy for a variety of reasons. Maybe they were traditionally successful but just really bored. Maybe the structures and rules of school just rubbed them the wrong way, and it was just they felt rebellious against it. Maybe the social scene at school was really uncomfortable for a variety of reasons. Maybe they were being bullied, maybe they were really shy. Maybe they just never found a connection with adults, or maybe their interests weren't academic. Maybe they were really into music or art or horseback riding or entrepreneurship or any number of things that weren't being well served in school. And so folks like this, who are usually families, they're usually at wit's end because kids go to school, and there's a whole bunch of people who don't go to school at all, right? Those are called homeschoolers, and some families do that on their own and have done it for years and years, and like historically, and also individual families, and that's fantastic. And so what we are is helping. What PLC does is it helps other families who would never think of themselves as homeschooling families live a homeschooling life with the kind of freedom and flexibility that entails. In New Jersey, there aren't state requirements for like what homeschooling needs to look like. You don't have to pass certain tests or check off certain curriculum benchmarks. You just say either to your public or private school, no thank you, we don't want your services, and then you withdraw, and then you do what you wish. So that's a lot that I've just said, but that's the short version. Are there questions about what that looks like? Yeah.
So do they get a report card?
No. We keep a kind of transcript for outside purposes, so that if a kid is applying to community college or college, that we could say, oh, you've taken this class, you did this independent study and stuff like that. But in terms of, we do that with the team, so like we're co-writing it. In terms of feedback, all of that happens on an individual basis, and then in terms of communicating with parents, there's a lot of ongoing communication, and then 3 times a year, at the beginning, in the middle, and the end, we have family meetings. So just the whole staff and the parents and the team get together in a room and talk about all aspects of what's been going on all together. And usually that doesn't focus on academics. Usually that focuses on, it's amazing how little relative concern that is whenever you're talking about the kid's whole life. Right?
So when a kid starts there, somebody sits down with them and says, these are your options, if you wanna take these classes, you're welcome to take them, so that they like at least know what their options are.
Right. So so it's not kid shows up and you're like, and we're just like, all right, do whatever you want, whatever, right? It's a lot. There's a lot more guidance, a lot more mentorship with that. So let me skip ahead for a moment. So these are the things that are currently going on, or that did until the last couple, or there are a couple that have stopped. But what the way things happen is kids say, I'm interested in studying such and such, either at the end of a year going into the next year, or at any given moment. And then we say, okay, well, we'll try to help you to make that experience happen, whether that's an independent study or making a class, especially if there are a couple of people who want to do it. And the sort of incredible thing, and this is one of the ways in which this life beyond school walls, why this is very apropos, is that, so there are only 3 of us on staff. Paul is starting Bucks Learning Cooperatives. There's just me and Allison and Joel. There's no way we could teach all of these things and make the whole place run.
How many students are
What's that?
there? How many?
The staff.
Students?
Oh, students? There are about 30.
No standardized tests.
No standardized tests. Yeah.
I was just wondering, what's do something?
Yeah, so that's sort of like a sort of an activism class. So they look at what problems they see in the world, whether it's like sort of an environmental concern or like a humanitarian concern, and then they do something about it. Right? It's not just a class where it's like, well, I'll get together and let's do something, but it's with that sort of activist focus. Yeah.
And what grades?
So these are, we say teenagers, so 13 through 18 or 19. We have a couple of 12-year-olds.
And they get a diploma?
No.
They get a GED?
They can, and some do. But the little known fact is that both for, well, let's say for college in particular, most colleges don't have a high school diploma as an entrance requirement. So you can just say, dear college, I would like to apply to your college. Here's how I've spent the last number of years of my life. I would like to go there. And then they will say yes or no, but you don't have to have a piece of paper in order to be admitted. There are exceptions to that. I think like the state schools in New York, Penn State, but the majority, you need to have a certain number of years of English and math and those kinds of things to be able to see, like, I've had these academic experiences, but having a GED or a state-sanctioned diploma is not necessary. I know. that's like the one of the big bombs where it's like, what did you just say? I don't have to go to high school to go to college.
I've heard that before.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
And where do the majority of these kids go? Do they end up going to college or just right into the career world?
Yeah, I'd say the majority go into college. A lot of them start taking community college classes as teenagers at 15 or 16, like one class at a time, and then transition out that way. Some of them take those community college classes as part of their high school transcript, and then apply out to 4-year colleges when they get to the end. They're kids who, like thinking of one kid in particular who transitioned out by like starting to take fire science classes at community college and is now like doing his beginning work as a firefighter in town. So like, there are like vocational paths out as well.
Where would they be, where would typically out of the 30, I don't think you make it comment like typical out of 30, but where would they be if they weren't with you, and where did they come from? You know what I mean?
So they come from maybe a 30-minute driving radius around
No,
Pennsylvania.
I don't mean geographically, I mean like where would they have been in the schools they were in?
Sure, some of them were in very expensive private schools locally, some of them were in like the typical public school in their area. It's a
They
whole
weren't in
range of
special programs in those schools.
Some of them had tried, the alternative program we had a kid join recently who was in like a school within a school, groovy sounding alternative program, but it still wasn't fitting her.
Well, I don't know alternative programs here in Pennsylvania. I know back in Jersey, most of those are behavior issues. In Jersey.
Okay.
They're not, these kids aren't in that, they're not behavior issues.
Some of them have some kinds of behavior issues.
So there's no typical really comment there either.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
How does your funding work?
So it's by tuition. We have some fundraising, but it's a sliding scale tuition. So for some families, our tuition is much less expensive than what they had been paying, and so it's really a non-issue. And then for some families, they pay very little.
And there's no state funding per pupil?
No. I think the things like that have been investigated, or sorry, we've looked into that possibility, but so far that hasn't worked. The upshot of this list, though, so these red ones, which is most of them, those are not taught by staff. Most of them are taught by community volunteers, work study students from Princeton, parents, the members themselves, like the teenagers. And it's the volunteers that I want to point to in particular, right? So the thing I was saying toward the beginning of like, so I have my experience as a math teacher. You notice a number of the non-red ones are math, and I do those, among some other things. But how cool that like, someone who has been doing woodworking for a very long time, and like has his own studio and he comes in once a week and does woodworking with kids. And someone who is a working architect in town, she comes in once a week and does a little class with these couple of kids. And someone who's been an engineer at one of the local places, who comes in and does electromagnetics with these couple of kids, and on and on and on, right? So you're bringing in people from the community to do the teaching with small groups of kids who are interested. And I mean, pedagogy matters. Like, I still believe that pedagogy matters, but pedagogy is a lot easier whenever the kids want to be there and the class is very small. Right. You need a lot less skill, maybe, and because you know how to do the thing anyway. So maybe I'll close. Maybe I left too little time to talk about PLC, but to close, I want to tell another story about another one of my students. So this is at a picnic. I think this is the beginning of year picnic from last fall. So down here in this corner, this is David. David's been with us for just about a year now. He was in the public school in the nearby town, a sophomore, really unhappy, really this, right? Like really like gruff and prickly and so on. He'd been bullied in middle school. He just become he had built a shell for himself and like didn't like doing homework and all these things. So his family came across PLC last January, and he joined almost immediately and became my mentee. And it's been a journey over the course of the year, but right from the get-go, when we asked him like what was he interested in spending time doing, his interests were Russian, blacksmithing, guitar, and ham radio. Needless to say, none of these were happening for him in school. He's already hooked up with doing guitar at a place called School of Rock outside of class. So we had these other three things that was like, all right, how are we gonna plug this kid into? So I found a blacksmith. Like, how do you find a blacksmith? Well, we know a guy who's like kind of into like those kinds of things. He was like, you need to call the blacksmith of Trenton. The blacksmith. So like there's like one old Ukrainian dude in Trenton who like still has a smithy.
Wow.
And like so David starts going there on weekends. And then we put out a call to to our network, hey, does anyone speak Russian? And so we got 3 people back to us who were like, I could help them do Russian. Great. So they started meeting one-on-one with a couple of those. And like ham radio. Well, it turns out that Princeton has a ham radio club, like the town. And so a guy came in, and for 8 or 10 weeks they met on a weekly basis, and then David got his ham radio license. And so you should have seen David's face whenever Joel walked in. I was like, oh, all right, so we got you a blacksmith. And it was like, what? You know, because like here's this person who had this interest. You know, and there's a way in which you can like have a thing and you really want it, but you feel like you're never gonna get it, and then suddenly someone says you can have it. It's like, what? You can't not. Anyway. So this is David now. This is at our Christmas party. He's recently shaved off his long hair because he's starting the Sea Cadets. So he's really into military stuff. So the Sea Cadets is like the Navy junior ROTC kind of thing. And he's just a very different kid now than he was a year ago. Like he like works on things in the workshop and has projects and does woodworking and, you know, does the outdoor activities, and he's our representative to our board. He just one day in our whole group meeting he was like, oh yeah, I'll volunteer to do that. And it's just such a happier young man with a very clear sense of direction in his life. Because I think, for a lot of reasons, but one of them was the way that he was able to be put in touch with the world. So I'll stop there. I hope we've at least touched these questions in some way that has been useful to y'all. If you're interested in learning more about PLC, there's both PLC's website, and if you search for Liberated Learners, which I stuck up there, there's a network of places like it that's slowly coming into being across North America. It's called Liberated Learners. There's also a summer conference for people who are interested in learning more about setting up a place like this. If you have any questions, my email is just @gmail, and that's my Twitter. And thanks for staying to the bitter end of EduCon and hanging out and sharing all your ideas.
Sorry, so it's at Gmail? Say it's
Yeah.
J_.
Yeah, all right. Oh, no. Yeah, thanks so much for coming. Make a safe trip back.
What are your hours for this?
We're open 8:45 to 3:15.
8:45 to 3:15.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We're closed on Wednesdays.
Really?
So it's like a regular school day.
Right.
I went to Marina, I was thinking it was at 8:45.
So what do the kids do on Wednesday? Wednesday you said there it's closed.
Yeah, they get a job. We help them find internships. They hang out with their parents. They hang out at home. Any number of things.
Nice.
And that's when we do staff meetings and meetings with people in the community. The point is, you're not in school. Like, this isn't just a place you come in place of school. You're in charge of. If anyone wants my PLC card or my Math Munch card, you're welcome to them. One or both or none.
I wrote that down. Thanks.
Sure.
I'll take the PLC card and I will be emailing you, hopefully, long story.
No, it's fine.
But
Okay.
I will.
Awesome.
Be in contact. And my name's Francesca,
Thank you so much.
so
Awesome.
you remember that.
Where are you now, currently?
In Philly, Mount Airy, public school. But second career, and when I went back to get my certification, whatever,